Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Dream Big Today. This is Monday, September the 15th, halfway through the month. It is amazing how time flies when you're having a good time. I look at my schedule and I think, oh my goodness, this whole week has got something going on every single day down to the hour. And I've got to look at my schedule to see what all I have to do and where I have to go. And it's funny because I don't know how I did this whenever I was working. I'm retired and I'm supposed to just be sitting in a rocking chair and enjoying life, right? Well, that wasn't the plan for me as I continue living in where God has placed me. And so I want to start this morning by reading a little bit of my devotion because it fits me and possibly you also. It says, Faithful God, I need to stop trying to work things out before their times have come. Help me to accept the limitations of living one day at a time. Are you already thinking about tomorrow? And I said I had something going on every day, but that doesn't mean I am worried about each day. That doesn't mean that I'm stressing out because of what I have to do. No, this means that I am staying organized, but I am only focusing on today. Today is all I have strength for. When something comes to my attention, I can pause and ask you whether it's part of today's agenda for me. See, the enemy will try to jump in there and make you feel like you're so busy you can't even take a breath or come up for water. But that's a lie from the pits of hell. God gave us enough time each day to do what He has planned for us to do. So we can't mess that up. Um, I found that when I follow this practice, there's a beautiful simplicity about my life, a time for everything and everything in its time. So I say this in the first statement. I need to stop trying to work things out before their times have come. Did you notice in the reading today in Isaiah how many times he says in that day? I thought that was pretty cool because he's specifically talking about a time. So if you would, put your prayer request and your praise report in the chat box, and we will join you in prayer and just celebrate all of those miracles that Jesus is doing in your life. In fact, I saw a miracle yesterday, and I pointed it out to a man that we've been praying for, and I've gone to his house and prayed with him. In fact, gave him a Bible, and he's a wonderful person. My husband and I both together go do that. But anyway, his cancer is almost nothing. It's gone from having a mass that has totally shrunk down to just like nothing. And you know what? When that supernatural healing is your belief in the supernatural healing, anything can happen. God can do anything beyond anything that we can imagine, guess, or request in our wildest dreams, and that's an Ephesians 3:20 statement. So let's look at our reading today. Lori just kicked it off this weekend so good. She's so insightful, and I love listening to Lori teach. So this morning, this message came to me, Isaiah, concerning Egypt. So now, before we go any farther, Egypt, the nation where God's people were enslaved for 400 years, you see that in Exodus, was hated by the people of Israel. Yet Judah was considering an alliance with Egypt against Assyria. But Isaiah warned against that alliance because God would destroy Assyria in his time. What did I talk about in time? We worry so much about time. When's this going to happen? We've been waiting for a long time. Well, what do you think about waiting for 400 years? The message that came to Isaiah was, "Look, the Lord is advancing against Egypt, riding on a swift cloud. The idols of Egypt tremble. The hearts of the Egyptians melt with fear. I will make Egyptian fight against Egyptian, brother against brothers, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, and province against province." Do you know, I feel like this is so spot on for today. This last week, if you know, we just have to step away from social media. We have to step away from all of the stupid stuff that happens that does not benefit us at all. It's good to have knowledge about things that's around us to prepare yourself for the time that you have a confrontation about your faith. But we don't back down. But just think about that. The nation will fight against each other. And it can be close as your family member or your neighbor. It doesn't, I mean, the enemy is stepping in to create chaos in what should be a strong, solid unit. I have seen that this last month with a husband leaving a wife, with a wife being left, with kids to raise on her own because of somebody else's actions, with somebody just the husband had to leave to go to, for some kind of treatment. The enemy is in to destroy the family unit. Now, for the Lord, on this portion, Isaiah prophesies coming civil war in Egypt, which was indirectly, the hand of God's judgment against them. Not many years after this time, it was divided into 12 kingdoms where there were many cruel wars. So he says in verse 4, "I will hand Egypt over to a hard, cruel master. The fierce king will rule them, says the Lord of heaven's armies." That title carries a strong sense of war. And then verse 5 through 10, the Lord is striking Egypt by drying up the Nile and then wrecking the economy. So look at that. The riverbed will be parched, the canals will dry up, the fishermen will lament for lack of work, there will be no flax for the harvesters, no thread for the weavers. Everything about this, as they knew it, life as they know it and knew it, will be gone. So the Nile was the key to Egypt's economy and agriculture. So a drought has a devastating effect. God promises this will happen as a judgment against Egypt. You know what? And it's all about disobedience. It's all about, look at everything that he's done, and nobody remembered all of the miracles. They wanted to do it on their own. What fools are the officials from Zoan? Their best counsel to the king of Egypt is stupid and wrong. And then look down at, let's see, 12. Where are your wise counselors, Pharaoh? Let them tell you what God plans, what the Lord of heaven's armies is going to do to Egypt. And then 14, the Lord has sent a spirit of foolishness on them. So all of their suggestions are wrong. And then 16, in that day, the Egyptians will be as weak as women. They will cower in fear beneath the upraised fist of the Lord of heaven's armies. Look how many times the title is used, the Lord of heaven's armies. This is like a spiritual strike on all of this. So when God strikes Egypt, there will be terror among all of the people. All that the Lord will have to do is wave his hand, and the people of Egypt will respond in terror. And they were worshiping idols of wood and stone, and when they could have been worshiping him. In that day, there will be an altar to the Lord in the heart of Egypt, and there will be a monument to the Lord at its border. Oh, there's borders with monuments to God. I would wonder what would that happen if we had a monument to the Lord, like just put up a cross on our borders. This is what we stand for. This is who we are. But we are also people who love, and not just war, but we war in the spiritual sense. Let's see, I wanted to jump on down to another place, because I read chapter 20, verse 5. It talks about, then the Philistines will be thrown into a panic, for they counted on the power of Ethiopia and boasted on their allies in Egypt. They will say, if this can happen in Egypt, what chance do we have? We are counting on Egypt to protect us from the king of Assyria. So as I was looking through my other Bibles, and Life Application has got so many good references and little tidbits of information. And there's a little section in there that's talking about our alliances today. So what are you relying on for your support? Government. We rely on government legislation to protect the moral decisions we made. But that legislation can't change people's hearts. We rely on science. They always said, trust the science. But were they speaking the truth when they said trust the science? Did they even know what science is? I mean, God is the overall person of that. We enjoy the benefits of science and technology. We look to scientific predictions and analysis before we look to the Bible. Then what about education? We act as though education and degrees can guarantee our future and success without considering what God plans for our future. Oh, education and a degree. How many degrees did Charlie Kirk have? Oh, guess what? He didn't have any. He quit college. He didn't believe what they were teaching. Look where God elevated him. Medical care. We regard medicine as a way to prolong life and preserve its quality. Oh wait, what have we heard some things about that? You know, I go to doctors. I believe it 100%, because you know what? God has given them the knowledge and wisdom and understanding, if they're praying for that, to take care of us. But that doesn't change our faith and moral living. And then there's financial systems. That can be scary if we are living on that. We place our faith in financial security, making as much money as we can for ourselves, and forgetting that while being wise with our money, we must trust God for our needs. At any moment, that financial flow can just stop and you are in a drought. And then what are you going to do? I thought that was good. Had to share that little tidbit with you. Isaiah goes on into chapter 21, and this starts the oracles. The first oracle is that human treachery leaves God's people with no earthly hope. So this message coming to him concerning Babylon, the desert by the sea, and look how descriptive he is in this. Disaster is roaring down on you from the desert like a whirlwind sweeping from the Negev. I see a terrifying vision. I see the betrayer betraying the destroyer, and the destroyer destroying. Go ahead, Elamites and Medes, attack and lay siege. I will make an end to all of the groaning Babylon caused. So Scholars see this as a rising up of a vast army marching through this desert land. So it's so big, so fierce, that as they come riding their horses, driving their chariots, it's a kicking up so much dust that it looks like a tornado. We know what tornado and that destruction can do. Can you imagine? All of this is so big and large and vast that it looks like something like that because they're going through that and stirring it up. Now, the Elam and Media are the ancient names for the people of Persia, which is modern day Iran. Just throwing that in there. So this was all about a strong military invasion. And then he goes on to talk about how this has shook him up, like this major, major vision. Have you ever had a nightmare that just left you shaking in your shoes? Well, here he is with this vision. His stomach aches and burns with pains. Sharp pains of anguish are upon me, like those of a woman in labor. I grow faint when I hear what God is planning. I am too afraid to look. My mind reels and my heart races. I long for the evening to come, but now I'm terrified of the dark. Oh, Isaiah is shocked by this nightmarish vision. This lets us know that when that day comes, we don't want to be here. That is going to be so amazingly scary that it caused Isaiah to just almost faint in fear. The prophet longed to see God intervene in the world, but he trembles when he sees the reality. It was awful, awful, awful. So then on over to chapter 22. 22? Let's see. No, 21. Sorry about that. 21. 6. Chapter 6. Or verse 6. I'm sorry. Wow. So this would be chapter 21, verse 6. Meanwhile, the Lord said to me, put a watchman on the city wall. Let him shout out what he sees. He should look for chariots drawn by pairs of horses, just kind of like we talked about in all of that dust. Let the watchman be fully alert. So, are you a watchman? Are you standing alert? It's something to think about today. The same panic and terror the people of Babylon felt when that great city was conquered will be seen again. When the Lord strikes the world system, both spiritual Babylon and commercial Babylon, the world will be terrified and mourn the same way. But God's people will rejoice over the fall of Babylon. When we get down to verse 9, says, now at last, look, here comes the man in a chariot with a pair of horses. Then the watchman said, Babylon has fallen. All of the idols of Babylon lie broken on the ground. Do you think about the day that you heard the Twin Towers have fallen? The planes are crashing. Thousands are dying. I find that similar in the fear that happened. Good morning, Abby. Oh, so welcome Abby to Dream Big Today. She's joining us this morning. She is precious. I got to hold her little baby the other day. So tell Shem that I love him. So Babylon has fallen, and it's repeated in that Babylon has fallen, is fallen, is and fallen, and so repeated emphasizes final and total destruction. Verse 11. This message come to me concerning Edom, and this is the second oracle, and this is about prolonged darkness. Oh, I don't like darkness. I'm always ready to go to bed and shut my eyes. I'm ready to get up in the morning. I don't like to wander around the darkness. In fact, I'd 10 times rather be home. But Isaiah paints a picture of judgment and terror that will come upon Edom. He says, "Watchman, how much longer till morning? When will the night be over?" And this is what someone from Edom calls. Now, Edom, let's talk about that just for a second. This is Esau's descendants. So the watchman replies, "Morning is coming, but night will return soon. If you wish to ask again, then come back and ask." Isn't that interesting? Don't just stand there and pester me. Come back later. Let's do this another time. And then the third oracle. The message came to me concerning Arabia. O caravans from Dedan hide in the deserts of Arabia. This third oracle shows human ferocity scattering fugitives in a darkened world. It says, "O people of Tema, bring water to these people, these thirsty people, food to these weary refugees. They have fled the sword and from the drawn sword." And then down to verse 16, the Lord said to me, "Within a year, counting each day," now that's specific, "all the glory of Kedar will come to an end." Now, Kedar is another word for Arabia, and it's the name of the second son of Ishmael. Only a few of its courageous archers will survive. I, the Lord, the God of Israel, have spoken. This name God gives a text of the last day implications and what he has said he will do. Are you standing on the word today? Stand on the word. You can't claim the promises if you don't know them, the promises and what will happen if you don't follow the promises. Oh, let's move on to Galatians. Galatians 2, 1 through 16. And this is good. Paul confronts Peter. Oh, did you ever think that there would ever be anything like that in the Bible, promoting a confrontation? Oh my goodness. I can talk about Charlie Kirk again, but he had debates that were loving debates. Paul is having a stern conversation with Peter. 14 years later, I went back to Jerusalem again, this time with Barnabas, and Titus came along too. I went there because God revealed to me that I should go. While I was there, I met privately with those considered to be leaders of the church and shared with them the message I had been preaching to the Gentiles. I wanted to make sure we were in agreement, for fear that all my efforts had been wasted and I was running the race for nothing. Now, he says, I went up by revelation. Paul went to Jerusalem by the express direction of God. So it was probably the one that was mentioned in Acts 11, 27 through 30. But there was contention rising over the place of Gentiles in the church. Oh my goodness. They thought there was people that didn't belong in church. Can you just imagine? Surely we don't do that today. Surely we don't look down on someone. I want you to know yesterday, we had another visitor from at church that we had baptized in jail last week, or week before last. No, it was last week. And he came to church yesterday. His mom also came. Isn't that awesome? So God used Peter to welcome Gentiles into church in Acts 10. Paul met privately with the leaders and shared what he was teaching Gentiles. This was sensitivity and love on Paul's part. It would have been easy for him to say, I'm right and anyone who disagrees with me is wrong. He knew that being right didn't give him the privilege of being rude. And that's where we have to be so careful whenever we are meeting with somebody that has different beliefs that you do. Maybe they don't have any beliefs. Maybe they've never been taught. Maybe they don't even know where to find Galatians in the Bible. That just sounds like a magazine to them that you order. But you know what? You have to build some kind of a relationship with someone. You have to be able to talk with them in a way that would entice them to seek Jesus, not to stay away from him. He says in verse 9, in fact, James, which is Jesus' brother, Peter, and John, who were known as pillars of the church, recognized the gift God had given me, and they accepted Barnabas and me as their co-workers. They encouraged us to keep preaching to the Gentiles while they continued their work to the Jews. But when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face that he was wrong. That is interesting. Peter was previously in agreement with welcoming Gentiles into the church without bringing them under the law of Moses. It was another story when Peter came to Antioch. He refused to associate with Gentile Christians once certain Jewish believers from Jerusalem came. Oh, wow. It's interesting how we change who we are in the midst of who we're around. I pray that I never do that. I pray that I can join a group of people, hold my convictions, and speak with love. Verse 14, when I saw that they were not following the truth of the gospel message, I said to Peter in front of them, since you, a Jew by birth, have discarded the Jewish laws and are living like a Gentile, why are you now trying to make these Gentiles follow Jewish traditions? And then 15, you and I are Jews by birth, not sinners like the Gentiles. Yet, we know that a person is made right by God, made right with God by faith in Jesus, not by obeying the law. And we have believed in Christ Jesus so that we might be made right with God because of our faith in Christ, not because we have obeyed the law. For no one will ever be made right with God by obeying the law. Paul reminds Peter that they are justified before God by the work of Jesus, not by keeping the law. I'm not justified and going to heaven because I always drive the speed limit and I always follow the rules and laws here. I'm going to heaven because I believe I've been saved. I love Jesus. What difference does it make if a Gentile is circumcised according to the law of Moses or if they keep a kosher table? All that matters is their faith in Christ, because that is how we are made right before God. The law can't save us, but after we become Christians, it can guide us to live as God requires. There's a reason for the laws, but there's a higher reason for the Bible, the promises, what God has given us. Let me flip over to my other Bible. I lost my spot. The law has two functions. Nope, that's not the one. Well, let me just read that because that's good. On a positive side, it reveals the nature and will of God and shows people how to live. On the negative side, it points out people's sins and shows them it's impossible to please God by trying to obey all the laws completely. I always use the driving as part of my obeying and disobeying. You know what? I did speed. I did probably roll a stop sign. All of that is illegal. But I inadvertently will do something like that. But it says in my notes, if observing the Jewish laws can justify us, why should we still obey the Ten Commandments and other Old Testament laws? We know that Paul was not saying law is bad because in another letter he wrote, the law is holy. Romans 7:12. Instead, he's saying that law can never make us acceptable to God. The law still has an important role to play. It guards us from sin, giving us standards of behavior, convicts us of sin, leaving us opportunity to ask for God's forgiveness, and drives us to trust the sufficiency of Christ because we can never keep the Ten Commandments perfectly. The law cannot save us, but after we become Christians, it can guide us to live as God requires. So, the law is good. God's law is about eternity. So as we live through this crazy world with all of the stuff that happens in it, we obey the laws, but we don't obey anything that breaks God's laws. Did that make sense? Thank you for joining me this morning, and you all have a great day, and come back at noon today, and we're going to talk about Psalms 59.